Let's set the stage. It's 1941. The world is knee-deep in the Second World War. While Europe is a battleground, the United States is sitting on the sidelines like that one friend at a party saying, "I'll just watch for now." Sure, America was helping out Britain with supplies and giving the stink eye to the Axis powers, but it wasn't officially in the war. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Japan had big plans. Their empire was expanding faster than a college kid's appetite during finals week. They wanted control over the Pacific, but they knew one thing stood in their way: the United States Pacific Fleet conveniently parked at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Now here's where it gets tricky. Japan had been negotiating with the US to ease tensions over their expansion. But those talks were more like an awkward first date where one side wants dessert and the other is already asking for the check. Secretly, Japan was planning a surprise attack because who needs diplomacy when you have a perfectly good fleet of aircraft carriers? On the morning of December 7th, 1941, Japan put their plan into action. At approximately 6 o'clock a.m., 6 Japanese aircraft carriers launched over 350 planes. Their target, Pearl Harbor. Their mission, cripple the US Pacific Fleet before breakfast. At 7:55 a.m., the first wave of Japanese bombers, torpedo planes and fighters descended on the unsuspecting harbour. Radar operators at Oahu had actually spotted the incoming planes earlier, but they thought it was a group of American B-17 bombers flying in from California. Oops! The Japanese attacked in 2 waves. In the first wave, they targeted battleships and airfields. This included iconic ships like the USS Arizona, USS Oklahoma, and USS West Virginia. Bombs and torpedoes rained down, creating chaos and destruction. The USS Arizona was hit by a 1,760-pound armor-piercing bomb which detonated in its forward magazine. The explosion was catastrophic. The ship sank within minutes, taking over 1,100 crew members with it. The USS Oklahoma was hit by multiple torpedoes and capsized. Sailors trapped below deck desperately tried to escape, some even using tools to cut through the ship's hull. Tragically, more than 400 men lost their lives aboard the Oklahoma. And let's not forget the airfields. Japanese bombers hit Wheeler, Hickam and Bellows airfields, aiming to destroy American planes before they could even take off. It worked. Rows of planes were destroyed, sitting helplessly on the tarmac. This was partly due to a preemptive measure against sabotage. American planes had been lined up wingtip to wingtip for easy security. Not exactly the best layout for surviving an air raid. The second wave came around 8:40 a.m., targeting more ships and facilities. By the time the attack was over, 21 ships were damaged or destroyed, including 8 battleships. Over 180 aircraft were wrecked, and the human toll was devastating. 2,403 Americans were killed, and another 1,178 were wounded. In just under 2 hours, the Japanese had delivered a staggering blow. But here's the twist. It wasn't the knockout punch they'd hoped for. Most of the Pacific Fleet's aircraft carriers, the true backbone of naval warfare, weren't at Pearl Harbor that day. They were out at sea, safe from the attack. Also, vital infrastructure like fuel depots and repair yards remained largely untouched. The Japanese had hurt the United States, but they hadn't crippled it. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. Spoiler alert. He was right. Congress declared war on Japan, officially pulling the United States into World War II. The attack on Pearl Harbor galvanized the American people. Factories ramped up production, men enlisted in droves, and the country's focus sharpened on one goal: victory. As for Japan, well, their surprise attack may have started strong, but they underestimated the resilience of their enemy. The United States would respond with a vengeance, turning the tide of the war in the Pacific with decisive battles like Midway, Guadalcanal, and eventually the devastating conclusion at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Pearl Harbor was a tragedy, no doubt about it, but it also marked the beginning of a united, determined effort by the United States to stand against tyranny. And in the end, that determination changed the course of history. And one last thing, maybe next time someone suggests lining up planes wingtip to wingtip, we go ahead and say, let's not.